The first thing I remember is the golden light. I was born on a golden morning in the heart of the African savanna. The air shimmered with heat even at dawn. The smell of life, dry grass, damp earth, and wild animals, seeped into every breath. I remember the sunlight pouring down, weaving through the acacia trees and spilling across the parched ground. And then I saw her, my mother, enormous, golden, her eyes deep and amber. She licked my tiny body, pulling the wetness from my fur. Beside me were my two siblings, their breathing steady and peaceful. We were bound together by blood and the shared beginning of our lives. On a rise of sun-baked earth stood my father, his dark mane thick, his stance commanding, his eyes swept across his domain, scanning for intruders. For a moment, the great king was just a father seeing his child for the first time. Those first days were spent in the gentle darkness of our den. The entrance allowed only thin beams of sunlight to spill in, lighting the air with motes of dust. I learned the world first through sound and scent. The deep rumble of my mother's purr, the sharp electric scent of a passing storm, and my father's low, rolling roar across the grasslands. If I had understood language back then, I might have said, "This is my kingdom too." The days after my birth blurred together into a haze of warmth, milk and shadows. Our den was a sanctuary, a shallow hollow in the earth, sheltered by twisted roots and a curtain of grass that swayed with the wind. From the outside it was invisible to most eyes, and that was the point. A lion cub's first weeks are meant to be hidden from the world, for, out there, even the smallest shadow can spell death. I was not content to lie still for long. My legs, wobbly as twigs, carried me only a few clumsy steps before collapsing under my own weight. Each attempt ended the same, a face-first tumble into the dry soil, but I didn't care. My world was no bigger than the den, but my mind was already reaching beyond it. I was barely half a year old when my mother decided it was time for me to witness the hunt. Until then, food had always appeared as if by magic, but the day would come when my paws would have to bring down prey. My roar would mean nothing if I could not feed myself or my pride. The air was cool, the grass damp from the night's dew. My mother rose earlier than usual, her body tense, her eyes fixed toward the east. The pride was already gathering. Two other lionesses, my aunts, crouched low in the tall grass. Far behind them, hidden from sight but not from scent, I caught the faint trace of my father. He would not hunt, but he would guard the kill. We stalked impala, sleek and golden red, their ears twitching at the slightest sound. My muscles tensed as the hunt began. My mother was a golden arrow. She sprang from the grass, her claws outstretched, and brought down the impala with a thunderous crash. That day, I learned more than how to hunt. I learned that patience and silence can be as deadly as claws and teeth. The thrill of the chase, the strategy, the camaraderie, it was all a part of the rhythm of the savanna. And I was born to run with the wind, to hunt with the pride, to be a lioness. The savanna changes its face with the seasons, and in my first year of life I learned that beauty could turn to hardship almost overnight. The rain stopped earlier than usual that year. The clouds vanished, leaving behind a sky so wide and pale it felt empty. The green grass that once danced in the wind began to fade, turning the color of dust. Waterholes shrank into cracked basins, and the air grew heavy with heat that pressed down like an invisible weight. At first, the changes were subtle, just a few more days between hunts, the streams running slower, but soon the land began to groan under the sun's relentless glare. The zebras and wildebeests moved on, chasing the promise of greener pastures far to the north. Their absence left the air strangely still, as if the life of the savanna itself had been drained away. The rains had brought life back to the savanna. The grass rose tall and green, the herds returned in great numbers, and the air was rich with the scent of prey. But the same rains that fed the land also fed ambition. On the savanna, abundance draws challengers. My father had ruled our territory for many seasons. His mane was dark and thick, his shoulders broad, his roar unmatched. To me, he was invincible. But power in the savanna is never truly secure. There is always another lion, younger, stronger, hungrier, willing to risk everything for a kingdom. When the first sign of trouble came, we were resting in the shade of a large acacia. From somewhere far off, a roar cut through the stillness. It was not my father's roar. This one was different, deep, raw, and threaded with challenge. It rolled across the grasslands like thunder, demanding an answer. My head snapped up, and I saw my father's ears twitch, his eyes narrowed. He rose slowly, muscles rippling beneath his coat. Then he answered. His roar was a wall of sound, powerful enough to make my chest vibrate. It carried the weight of a king declaring his claim. This is mine. The world is full of kings, and I am one of them. As a cub, I learned the ways of the pride. I grew strong and swift, but it was never enough. I wanted more than the endless cycle of hunting and patrolling. I wanted to rule. One by one, the rivals of my father were defeated, and his wounds became the borders of my world. But as I watched him grow older, I knew my time would come soon. I was a young male in the dangerous in-between, strong enough to challenge some, but not yet powerful enough to hold territory of my own. My mother began taking me along on serious hunts, and I learned the patience of the stalk and the discipline of the ambush. There were battles, too. One evening we caught the scent of intruders. 2 nomadic males. My father's mane bristled. He didn't need to tell me what to do. I moved to flank him, and we drove the nomads from our land. I was a warrior in my own right, but the borders of our territory felt smaller every day. I knew that someday I would have to leave and carve out my own kingdom. And as I watched my father grow older, I waited for the day that I would become a king. When the next dry season came, I was no longer the skinny young male who had to stay behind my father's shoulder. I was bigger, stronger. My roars echoed across the savannah, and I could take down prey by myself, but being bigger meant other things too. Other lions could see how strong I was, and they came to test me, to see if I was worthy. One afternoon, while we were resting, I heard a lion roar. It was a challenge, it was for me. Without hesitation, I got up and walked towards the sound. The challenger was older than me, but I fought hard. We clashed, and I felt his claws rip through my side, but I kept fighting until finally he ran away. I was hurt, but I was also proud. I had shown the other lions that I was not afraid. They could try to challenge me, but I would be ready. That night, as I lay with the pride, I knew that my father was watching me, waiting to see if I would win. I had proven myself as a fighter, but I had also shown courage and respect, and that meant more than any battle. The savannah has a way of whispering truths long before they are spoken aloud. And by the time the second rainy season since my first challenge had passed, I could feel the shift in the wind. Not in the weather, but in the rhythm of our pride. My father, once the unshakable pillar at the heart of our territory, had grown slower. When the nomads came, it was me who led the charge, with only one of the older lionesses at my flank. We didn't fight. The nomads turned back when they saw us. But the shift was not only in the pride, it was in me. My body was at its peak, shoulders broad, muscles corded under my coat. My mane was heavy and thick, the black streaks at its edges marking my maturity. My roar rolled across the grasslands with a depth that startled even me. Prey scattered at the sound, and even hyenas gave me a wider berth than before. But the crown is not just muscle and voice. It is the weight of responsibility, and I was beginning to feel its pull. When we hunted, I found myself watching the others more than the prey. When we patrolled, I memorized every scent along the border. Then came the night the decision was made. A storm had broken over the savannah. Lightning split the sky, rain lashing down in sheets. In the chaos, a small group of hyenas pushed deep into our territory. By the time we reached the carcass, the hyenas were tearing at it. My father was with us, but when the hyenas turned to face us, he hesitated, just for a heartbeat, enough for me to see it. The years had dulled his hunger for battle. I didn't wait. The crown of the savannah is never passed down gently. It is not given with words, nor with ceremony. It is taken, it is earned in the dust, the roar, and the blood of battle. I had known this since the first time I saw my father defend our land. Now the day had come for me to claim it. It began before dawn. The air was still, the grass heavy with dew, and a pale light washed over the horizon. I awoke to the faint scent of strangers, lions, 2 males moving in the north. My mane bristled even before my eyes opened fully. They were here for us. The pride stirred uneasily as the first roar tore across the plains. I answered with my own roar, deep and sharp enough to shake droplets of dew from the grass. The sound rolled outward, bouncing off the acacia trees, warning the intruders. This land is not yours. But they came anyway. They appeared over the rise like shadows solidifying. 2 young males, mane is full and dark, shoulders broad with the arrogance of youth. And then, just like that, the fight began. The morning after my roar declared kingship, the savannah felt different beneath my paws. The wind that carried my scent now swept across borders that were mine to defend. The lionesses, my mother among them, no longer glanced toward my father for direction. Their eyes came to me first. But being king was not the end of the struggle. It was the beginning of a new one. Every patrol was an opportunity to send a message. This land is taken. My mane caught the wind. My paws pressed fresh prints into the dust, and every scrape of claw against tree bark was a warning to those who might test me. But a crown is not secured by scent alone. 3 days into my reign, the northern border was challenged. Not by lions this time, but by a band of hyenas. We don't fight the hyenas, the lionesses. My mother arrived first, their roars cutting through the noise like a blade. The hyenas broke and scattered into the tall grass. That night, I lay in the center of the pride, the lionesses resting around me. My father lay apart, silent, his eyes closed. I had to learn when to push the lionesses to chase and when to conserve our strength, when to stand at the front and when to let them lead. The savannah is a tough school. It teaches you early that danger doesn't always come with a roar. Sometimes it comes on silent paws, carried by the wind, unseen until it's too late. Weeks into my reign, I started noticing things. A faint scent along the western border that didn't belong to any member of my pride. The sudden absence of a herd of impalas that had grazed near our acacia grove for months. The uneasy glances of the lionesses during the night watch. My instincts told me the truth. There were intruders, and they were watching us. They didn't want to fight, at least not yet. They were patient. They wanted to learn my patterns, my strengths, my weaknesses, so I did the same. I watched them from afar, studying their movements, waiting for my chance. And then one night the opportunity came. I took 2 of the strongest lionesses, and we stalked their den. It was empty, but I made sure to leave my mark on every rock and tree, a message to the newcomers and a warning to any others who might be thinking of trespassing. This is my land. Be warned. The savannah has no crown jewels, no metal, no throne. But a king's heaviest burden is not the battles. Come seasons of peace, you hear the whispers in the tall grass. Feel the eyes of challengers on your back. Smell the scent of rivals on the wind. You patrol, you hunt, you lead. And in the quiet moments, you choose. Choose to hunt big prey that could feed your pride for days, but might injure a lioness, or choose to hunt small prey that is safer. You choose to move your pride toward water, risking a dangerous journey through enemy territory, or stay close to home where food is scarce. These decisions, they're yours to make, and the pride follows without question. You are the king, your word is law. You are the wall that protects them from ruin. And in the still hours before dawn, when the pride is asleep, you walk alone to the edge of your territory and let the silence press in. For a moment you are just a lion, not the king, just you. The wind in your fur, the moon in your eyes, and the endless plains stretching out beneath you. In those moments you feel the weight of the crown, and you know you'll never truly be free of it until the day you die. This is a story about power and change, about the circle of life and the law of the jungle. It's about me. I used to be the king of this savannah. The savannah does not care for peace. It tolerates it for a time, like the brief stillness before the storm, but in the end, change is inevitable. For seasons I had held the crown, weathering droughts, driving away intruders, guiding the pride through abundance and scarcity. My mane had grown thick and dark, my body still strong, but nothing lasts forever, not on the grasslands. It began with a sound I had not heard in many moons, a roar, long, rolling, deep. Not a warning, but a declaration. It came from the east, across the river where our borders met open plains. This was not the probing cry of a lone wanderer. This was the voice of a lion who had come for the throne. In my youth I would have run to meet that sound without hesitation, but now I rose more slowly, my bones creaking faintly, my muscles tightening with the memory of 100 battles. I answered the roar with one of my own. It was still powerful, still mine, but in my chest I felt the strain. The challenger roared again, closer this time. When he appeared on the horizon, I saw at once that he was in the prime of his strength. His mane was full and black along the edges, his shoulders rolling with muscle. Behind him moved another male, slightly younger but no less dangerous. A coalition, 2 males bound by blood or necessity. I knew what that meant. They would not only challenge me, but seek to claim the pride itself, to drive out or kill the cubs, to replace me entirely. The lionesses tensed, their ears flattening. My mother's gaze met mine briefly, calm, but heavy with the understanding of what was about to happen. The 2 intruders approached without hesitation. The leader locked eyes with me, his tail twitching in slow, deliberate rhythm. The younger one paced to the side, trying to flank. I stepped forward, keeping them both in my line of sight, my mane bristling. There was no posturing, no long exchange of roars. The leader lunged first, and the world narrowed to the chaos of battle. He hit with the force of a falling tree, his claws raking across my shoulder. I countered with a swipe that caught his jaw, snapping his head to the side. We crashed to the ground, rolling, our roars and snarls tearing through the air. The younger male darted in, striking my flank before leaping back out of reach. They were fast, faster than me now. Each time I drove the leader back, the younger one was there, harassing, forcing me to turn, sapping my strength bit by bit. I fought with everything I had, my jaws finding flesh, my claws drawing blood. But for every wound I gave, I took one in return. The lionesses roared from the edges, but they did not intervene. This was my fight alone. At one point I drove the leader to the ground, my teeth clamping on his shoulder. He roared in pain, thrashing, and for a heartbeat, I thought I could end it. But the younger one struck hard at my hind leg, his claws digging deep, and pain exploded through me. I staggered, the grip on my opponent breaking. The leader surged up, slamming into my side. I hit the ground hard, the air driven from my lungs. Dust filled my mouth, my chest burned. I tried to rise, but the younger one was already on me, forcing me down with his weight. The leader's shadow fell over me, his roar loud enough to rattle my skull, and then, stillness. I lay there, panting, my body trembling from exhaustion. My eyes met the leader's, and in them I saw not mercy, but victory. He stepped back, his tail high, his chest heaving. The younger male joined him, and together they turned their attention to the pride. Why do we need to protect wildlife? Here's one reason: it's in our nature. In Vietnam, wildlife is not just part of the natural world. It's deeply woven into the country's cultural identity. The legendary turtle, the wise old man, the tiger, the guardian spirit of the forest, the crane, a symbol of long life and fidelity, even the mythical dragon, which we believe was inspired by crocodiles and large snakes. All these creatures are part of our folklore and mythology. They're also part of our everyday lives. For centuries, communities in Vietnam lived in close balance with nature. They took only what they needed and left the rest for future generations. But as the country developed and poverty became more widespread, people began to exploit the forests and the animals within them. Today, there is hope. Ecotourism is growing in Vietnam. More and more people are seeing the value of protecting the natural world and are making efforts to conserve it. Birdwatching, trekking, cave exploration, diving, all these activities can bring in money for local communities while funding conservation projects. And when locals are the ones leading these tours, everyone benefits. By embracing ecotourism rooted in cultural heritage, Vietnam can protect its amazing wildlife while celebrating what makes it so unique. This is an old lion. The seasons had turned many times since I last walked as a king. The rains had come and gone. The grass had withered and grown again. My mane, once dark and full, had begun to thin, streaked with the pale dust of age. The muscles that had carried me through battles and hunts ached more each morning. My strides were slower, but my eyes still read the savanna as they always had, every shadow, every shift in the wind. The lioness and her 3 cubs had long since grown. The eldest male had wandered off to carve his own path, his mane rising in the morning sun. The 2 females had been taken in by a small pride farther south. I remained alone again, just as I had been when exile began, but the emptiness no longer felt sharp. I had lived through the rise and fall of kingdoms, my own and others, and I had learned that solitude was simply another form of belonging on the savanna. It was in the dry season that I felt the weight of years most. The days were hotter, the nights colder. Prey was scarce, water scarcer still. I hunted when I could, resting often under the sparse shade of acacias, my ribs more visible now. My body was no longer the weapon it had been, but my mind, my patience was as sharp as ever. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I heard it, a roar. Not the taunting roar of a challenger, nor the arrogant claim of a young male. This was different, lower, closer, carrying a note of unease. I followed it out of instinct, moving toward the sound until I crested a low rise. Below, in a small clearing near a waterhole, a young lion stood over the body of a wildebeest. Around him 6 hyenas circled, their cackles high and mocking. He was strong, but too inexperienced to face so many alone. His strikes were wild, his breathing ragged. I could have turned away. It was not my fight, not my pride, not my territory. But as I watched him struggle, I saw flashes of myself, of the young lion I had been. Full of fire and will, untested but unbroken, I roared. The sound tore from deep within me, raw and powerful despite the years. It rolled over the clearing, silencing the hyenas for a heartbeat. Then I descended the slope, my paws steady, my mane catching the dying light. The hyenas hesitated, their eyes flicking between me and the young male. I struck first, barreling into the largest of them, my jaws closing around its shoulder. It yelped and broke away. The young lion surged forward beside me, his confidence reignited. Together we drove them back, snapping, striking, forcing them to retreat into the tall grass until only the sound of their laughter remained on the wind. The young male looked at me, chest heaving, eyes wide. He bowed his head slightly in the silent language of lions. Respect, I nodded once and turned to go. The kill was his. I had no need of it.